Hello everybody, this is a lecture for hold on one second, CS 453, the Android or mobile application development class, I should say. And today we're going to go over services, and let's see, that would be assignment number 5. Right now, only assignment number 4 is due. Let's take a look at, thought I had the syllabus up here somewhere. Here it is right here. So let's see, today is the 23rd, making the lecture for the 24th, which is tomorrow, Tuesday. So this Thursday on 3/26, we have assignment number 4 that's due. Number 4 is the mapping assignment, if you remember that right. Let's take a look here just to make sure. That one is to use Google Maps. And if you missed the last video, I showed you how to put 2 markers on a map in the last video. And I hope you're playing around with Google Maps, and hopefully it's working for you. I have had a couple students send me emails on that one. And the biggest problem is they see a white screen or a beige color screen with the word Google on the bottom of it, and then the emulator just hangs there. That is usually caused by a bad internet or a slow internet connection. It uses a lot of internet data, and so you might want to try adding more memory to your emulator, trying a different emulator, or trying at a different time of day, maybe in the early morning or late at night when you think the internet access might be a little bit stronger. Because if you're suffering from a bad internet connection, most likely that's why the map's not loading. If it does say Google on the screen, it is loading. Your key worked, your API key is working just fine. The problem is the internet connection. The Google Maps uses a lot of internet. You need a lot of bandwidth for that one. Okay, so next week we actually have a spring break. I don't know what we're going to be doing for it, but we do have spring break. It's kind of ironic. We have a stay in place with a spring break. And then we have another week after that, 4/7 to 4/9, and then we have another week, and then that's when assignment number 5 is due. So number 5 covers broadcasts, receivers, and services. I want to talk about services. And then the time in between, before we get to that assignment, I will also talk about broadcast receivers as well. But let me just introduce the assignment to you as well so you know what we're doing here. Today is just going to be about services. So I'll show you services today, and then we'll look at broadcast receivers in another lecture. I might actually show you a couple of services examples because these are kind of cool and kind of fun to play with. So in lieu of an activity, we can create a service, and the service runs in the background, kind of like a background process or thread, but it runs all the time. So the Android broadcast receiver is a dormant component. So the broadcast receiver is the dormant component that listens to system-wide broadcast events or intents. When any of these events occurs, it brings up the application into action when either by creating a status bar notification or by performing a task. So a broadcast receiver hangs around in the background, and it waits for an event to occur, and it listens for that event. And then it performs whatever activity is supposed to be done. Now, we're not going to look at that today. We're going to look at services, which is the next component. So unlike activities, the broadcast receiver doesn't contain any user interface. Neither does a service, by the way. The broadcast receiver is generally implemented to delegate tasks or services depending upon the type of intent data that's received. So it's a task that will be performed, like sending up a notification or answering a call or doing something. There's a task that's going to be performed when the event is received by this background process. Now, a service, on the other hand, is an application component that can perform long-running operations in the background. You just let it run, and it's like a background process. So it doesn't provide user interface, but another application component can start the service, and then it continues to run in the background, until the user switches it to another application. Even if the user switches to another application, it will just run in the background. So you start this you start the service. The service runs in the background until you stop the service. We're going to create an app with 2 buttons. one to start the service and then one to stop the service, so you can see how that works. So for the assignment, you're going to implement a service, like what I'm going to show you today, or a background receiver, which you'll see in an upcoming lecture. Your choice. You don't have to do both, do one or the other. Create a theme for the application. It should have a purpose. It should do something other than just starting and stopping the broadcast receiver service. Don't create a simple timer or an alarm clock. Try to be more creative with your functionality. So you have to spend some time to think about this one. You may use a system-wide generated intent or design your own unique logic. You can be creative. You can mix a broadcast receiver or a service with a game or an app theme of your choice. You could do both of them if you wanted to. It should not be the total functionality of the app, so try to create some other theme or some other functionality. So you could also take one of the other apps that you've created for this class and add a background service or a broadcast receiver to that app as well. So at this point in the course, with assignment number 5 and beyond, you can feel free to recycle some of the other assignments that you've done, like maybe the flashcard assignment or something. And maybe you can have it like play music, or maybe do a timer for how long it took for each person to answer each one of the flashcards or something. That would be a fun one. So you can use timers and you can use an alarm, but it shouldn't just be an alarm or a timer. You should have some other functionality mixed in there, and you can recycle functionality. So that's what I was saying. You could take your flashcard app that you created, and you could add a timer to it, or it could just be a background kind of thing going on there that just doesn't tell the user until it's over with how long it took them to answer all the questions, or how long they spent studying, or something of that nature. Anyway, that's just one idea I just kind of came up with on the top of my head here. But think about it. You'll probably want to have a theme. So anyway, the assignment's not due till the 15th, which is a long ways away at this point, so don't stress on it. So I put in the examples folder, let's see what we got here. I'm sorting it by date modified. I just put them in today. And we have music service. We have a music file called sound.mp3. And then I have services.pdf. I'm going to start in with services.pdf. This comes from the developer.android.com website. And it explains what services are. And there's 2 basic types. There's 2 different states of the service. So the service is a component that runs in the background to perform some long-running operation without needing to interact with the user. And it works even if the application is destroyed or closed, or the user's moved on to another application. So there's 2 states. There's the started and the bound. The started is when the application component, such as the activity, starts it by calling a method called start service. And once it's started, the service can run in the background indefinitely, even if the component has been destroyed. So once you start the service, it runs. It's not attached to the app. It is just running in the background. If the app closes down and doesn't close the service, well, then the service is still running. We also have what's called a bound service. So a service is bound when the application component binds it to a calling bind service. So the bound service offers a client-server interface that allows components to interact with the service, send a request, get results, or even do some cross-process or inter-process communication with the service. So you can communicate with the service through a bound state. So the service has a life cycle to it, just like the activity. And this would be in lieu of an activity. So you have activities that run. This is another form of component called a service. It's another class object that we're going to create. Very similar to an activity. It has a life cycle. And the life cycle callback methods can be implemented to monitor the changes in the service's state. You don't have to implement them all. But they're going to perform the work that's appropriate for each one of the stages. The following diagram here, the left one here, shows the life cycle for the start service. And then the right-hand side one shows the bind service, which are your 2 different types of services. So you see that there's a start service, bind service. Bind services are ones that you can communicate with. Start service is just a generic service. And we have the on create, the on start, or the on bind. We have a services running state, and now the client can interact with the service here through a on unbound or on rebind, and then on a destroy, the service goes away. And here we just have the service running. So the service is stopped, there's no callback to it, and there's just a destroy. So this is an unbounded service, this is a bounded service, because you can actually communicate with it through IPC. So to create the service, you create a Java class and extend the service base class, or one of its existing subclasses. We're just going to do service. Service class defines various callback methods. Most important are given below. And this is really for your own reference. I'm not going to go through them all. You can read this on your own. But the onBind, on start, on unbind, on create, on destroy. These are the popular, most commonly used methods. And then there's some skeleton code in here that shows you how to write the methods. So we've got the onStart command with the parameters needed for that one, the onBind, the onUnbind, onDestroy. So we got some sample code in there that demonstrates how the methods are used. So read through that at your own pace. If you're interested in doing a service for assignment number 5, it's called services.pdf. It's in the examples folder. So download sound. Let's just take this one here, download linked file as sound.mp3, or find an mp3 file that you like. You're going to need it for this example. And then click on music service.txt. And so let me, oops, I have my emulator up. I thought I had Android Studio up. Let's bring Android Studio up. At least I got my emulator started here. Save us some time. Let's see. All right, start a new Android project and create an empty activity. Oh, let's call this one my service. It doesn't really matter what you call it. My service. Clicking on finish. And my internet access is running a little bit on the slow side, so we'll see what happens here. We don't need it with the maps. If I was trying to do the maps, I'd be kind of nervous about it, but this should be all right. It does affect the Gradle. The internet access speed does actually affect the Gradle, especially when you're working online and it's trying to sync. So, or it's trying to do an update or something. Hopefully I won't be doing any updates right now. So, all right, as soon as this comes to life, let's take a look and see what we've got here. Let's starting with the GUI. The GUI for activity_main is going to have 2 buttons on it, a start service and a stop service. This is a very simple example. Using a relative layout. So let's go ahead and copy this. I'm going to start in with the layout. As soon as this comes up, it still looks like it's configuring the build. We're still working here. Yeah, I suspect it's going to run a little bit on the slow side, only because my internet, everybody's on the internet today. I guess that's what we get with the shelter in place, is everybody at home on Netflix, on the internet, taking up all my bandwidth. It's getting worse and worse every day. Let's see. So continue my complaining. It looks like we're going to sync up any moment now. It looks like we're indexing. Okay. I do have to wait for it to become available. I guess I could pause the video, but no, I'm here already. All right, so I'm going to click on the activity main, activity_main.xml file, clicking on the text. Let's just remove this crap that's here and stick in the 2 buttons. So I got a start button called a button start service. I got a button stop to stop the service, and I got a relative layout. Couldn't get any more simpler than that. All right. So now we actually have to, I'm going to create the service first. So we don't need a layout for this, but we do need to create the class. So while I'm here, I'm just going to copy this here. Oops. There we go. And now I'm going to click on my package here, and I'm going to go File, New, Java Class. And let's see, I think this one's actually called My Service, but let me just take a look here real quick. Yeah, I called it My Service. So, My Service. And it doesn't really matter what's connected here. We don't want to create one with a user interface, so we'll leave that one. I'll leave the package up there and paste in the code for the service class. Now we are going to get a little message here because raw doesn't exist yet. We have to put the sound file in. But let's take a look at what we've got here. We've got public class My Service that extends service. Very similar to an activity, but it's not extending app activity or anything like that. It is extending service. Now this service is going to play a song in the background, which is the way we're going to be able to tell when the service is running, because we're going to hear music in the background. And so it's kind of twofold. It's also showing you MPlayer. Media Player. It used to be called MPlayer, now it's called Media Player. Media Player is automatically given for you, plays music, media. Actually would play a video as well. So we have the Android App Service. That's what we're extending from. We have an intent, because we're going to use an intent. Are we going to use an intent? Yes, we are. We have the Media Player, we have the iBinder, we have Toast. I'll talk about iBinder in a later lecture. I'm going to kind of skip it for right now because I've got I'm going to talk about that when I talk about the broadcast receivers. I don't want to do too much today because we are kind of ahead. Media Player, My Player. We've got, it's a data type. The data type is called iBinder, and it's an intent binder, and it's going to bind the intent. Well, this is just returning null, and it's not really being used for anything, but it's in there because it's part of the part of an interface that's part of service. So here's what we're really doing is on create, and this is basically one of the methods that we've got here. We've got the onCreate method, and when the onCreate method starts, it's going to put up a toast message that says service created, and then it's going to actually load the MPlayer to create a MPlayer instance that has this raw sound file in it that we're going to get to momentarily. We have to create the raw folder, and then we have to drag the sound file into it. It will play an MP3 file or an MOV file. Also plays other types of files too, but yeah. MPlayer.set looping to false, which is is it going to play over and over and over and over again, or is it just going to play the song one time? And then we got a void on start. Now the on start looks like it was depreciated in ice cream, but it still works and it's still part of the method. So here it's going to say service started. We don't actually need the on start anymore. The on create will do it for us, because the on create right now actually has the media player and the starting of the my player media player. So this is, we could move this line and put it up here and get rid of this method because it is depreciated, but it's just showing you it's still part of the API. So it's just showing another lifecycle method. So this one says a service started, and then on the destroy method, we're going to have the service stopped. And basically we're going to stop the MPlayer. So MPlayer start, MPlayer stop. So if you wanted to look at just the MPlayer code, you make an instance of Media Player. We're going to call it My Player. I keep calling it MPlayer because it used to be called that. It's Media Player, My Player. And then we set it to create a media player object that is the sound that we're going to copy into the R resource raw folder that we're going to create. And then we're just setting a parameter. This is optional. We're just setting the looping to false. So it only plays it one time instead of playing it over and over and over again. If you had a game or something, you'd probably want it to loop because you'd want to play the sound over and over in the background while the game was going on. And then we start it, and then we stop it. There's a reset, there's a refresh. Go look up Media Player, and you'll see all the associated methods. But this is what our service is doing. So our service has got a little bit of work we got to do ahead of time. But before I do that, I want to, I'll save that one for last. I want to close it, and let's update the main activity. So main activity. Let's copy this one in here, and we will. Yeah, I can just take everything except for the package name. All right. So main activity extends compact activity, implements the view on click listener. Okay, we know that. We've got the buttons, the instances of the button start and the button stop. And then in the on create, well, we are creating the find resource by ID for the button start and the button stop. We're adding it to the two variables that we created to represent the buttons. And we're going to put the listener on it. So if you still haven't figured out how to do a listener yet, here's yet another example. So we set the on-click listener to the start and the stop button. And guess what? We have the on-click from the implements on-click listener. Up here we have the overridden method that needs to be implemented called on-click. And if the r.id is button start, then this is the line of code we're going to run. We're going to say start service new intent this myservice.class. That's the service. And then we're going to run the method stop service on the button stop, and the stop service method is going to run a new intent, and it's going to send it to this. So we're running an intent as well as starting the service. Well, we start the service through a new intent. So myservice.class is the same one. You could use a different one. You can have a button to start a bunch of services. You can do more than one service. You don't have to do, this is just showing you a simple service start and a service stop. The stop service and the start service are implemented to basically start and stop the service. And so they're implemented on the, here we go. On the on create, where we have the service, the app service. Because it extends the service, we can run the method to start and stop the service. So on start, if we had an on, we have an on destroy, which will happen with an on stop. So I was just checking to verify that. But yes, this is the intent, new intent for the start and the stop of the service. So it's pretty simple code. It's built-in functionality for you. The intent, we've seen intents before. This is an intent to start and stop a service versus opening up another activity versus running shared content, which I don't believe we've looked at shared content yet. And so we do have to put in the whole class name, myservice.class, in here, by the way. But you can start another class object of any type. This just happens to be a service. So, and we're starting a service, stopping a service, which is built-in functionality. Okay, so there's a couple things we got to do. We have to create that raw folder. So let's get rid of this nasty little error message first. And so if we go down to the resource folder, and what we want to do is go into File, New, and then we want to do an Android resource directory. And click the little scroll to raw. So this allows us to put raw files in there that are not of any media type in particular. So you can put MP3, MP4, MOV, picture files, movie, MP4, and anything you want can go into this folder. It's just raw media. So if I press OK, I have the raw folder. Now we want to find that, oh, there it is, I think. I see it right here, actually. Drag that sound file, stick it in the raw folder. Yep. And lo and behold, the message went away. It should find it now. So if you, so I called mine is the sound.mp3. If you want to test it out, that one works. It's kind of a classical music file. You're going to hear it momentarily. And if you find another one, it doesn't matter what extension. You can use an MOV or WAV wave. It doesn't have to be an MP3, but you can put any raw music file in here. It supports like 99.9% all files. AAC, all those special ones. And you don't have to put the name here. This is just the resource like any other resource. Sound. So, okay, one more thing we have to do. We have to edit the manifest file. So in the Android manifest file, I like to put it towards the bottom, outside of the activity, inside of the application. Let me take a look at my little cheat sheet here. Here we go. We have to add the service. So I'm going to copy the service out of here. The last one we already did, creating the raw folder and dragging a music file into it, which we did. So we have to add this code to the manifest inside of the application. So we don't actually need this anymore. Let's see. I'm going to stick it right here. We add it in there. Now we have the service that's recognized. It's called my service, and it's enabled, meaning true. It's by default, it will be enabled. And basically, just like when we use intents with other things, it allows the manifest gives us permission to use the service within the application. So I'm actually going to run her now. Let's see. Hopefully I don't get any error messages. And let's see, I think I've got my emulator up here ready. Let's see. At least we don't have to boot the emulator from scratch. If it takes too long, I'll pause the video so you don't have to sit here waiting for it. But I think it should be pretty quick. See it work. One of the things you do want to make sure is that, build successful, which is good. You want to make sure your volume is up on your emulator, because if the volume is set too low, that's the volume right here. If it's set too low, here's the thing. You won't be able to hear the sound. So I'm going to press on so we have the start service and we have the stop service. It doesn't really matter. The service is not started. So if I press the stop service, nothing really happens. But if I press the start service, I see service created. Oh, there goes the music. And then service started. So you can hear the classical music, relaxing music in the background there. Relaxing. So I can close the app down. I can load another app. I can, let's see, I'm going to bring up this. This is the Chrome browser. Nah, I don't really want the Chrome browser. Let's see, get rid of the Chrome browser. Oh, no. Let's see if I can get rid of that. Oh, I don't want that one. Oh, there we go, get rid of it. If I press the stop service stopped. This time there is something to stop, so it will stop it. These methods are still working though. On the main activity, on the my service, if I go into, and I see that I have the two toast messages here, service created and then service started. You can see the life cycle working with the on create and then the on start with this app. So if you can notice it down here, service created, and then it says service started. And it actually starts the music from scratch or from the beginning again. But you could destroy the app. The music still runs. You can go to something else. It's running in the background. It doesn't matter which screen you're on inside of the app. Okay, you're getting a little irritating. Let's see. My service. There we go. There we go. It's a little. I don't like classical music. It was a free file I found online. All right. So if it's running in the background, you can have anything else happen with inside of the app or outside of the app as well. Or you could just destroy the app and the service will still run in the background. So there you have it. There's the service. Hopefully you found this to be educational. It's really just a basic example to demonstrate what a service is. There's no way of communicating with this particular service outside of starting and stopping it. It does run as its own process, and it does run in the background, and it will continuously run regardless of whether or not this activity is actually running. If you wanted a broadcast receiver, then you would run a special type of service, which is called a broadcast receiver, that listens to activities and can communicate through interprocess communication with other activities and other services. And it can start and stop things. The service itself, in this particular case, is just running the music. You could have it bring up, I don't know, you can have the service can start a broadcast receiver. The service can do notifications. It can do a bunch of behaviors. So I let you be creative with that one when you implement it for assignment number 5. Don't start assignment number 5 yet because you haven't seen broadcast receivers yet. And you might decide that you want to do a broadcast receiver instead of a service. So it's just something to think about. I don't know if I would start on it yet. It's not due for a very long time. So I would definitely hold off a little bit and make sure you do the mapping assignment first. Well, that is all for today. And the next one, we will do broadcast receivers, and then we'll also do, well, we have to get into a lot of different concepts as well. So stay tuned for another video coming soon. See you guys later.